In this video, I would like to have a look at the 10 biggest blunders made in history during World Championship matches. So let's have a look at the first example, game of Chigorin against Steinitz in 1892. Look at the following position. White is probably winning if he just captures the pawn on b7, and now after rook takes d5, knight f4, the two rooks are hanging. That should have been winning, but instead, look what White did. He played here the move bishop b4. He wanted to consolidate its position, attacking the rook, simply overlooking there is rook takes h2. Oh my god, how is this possible? King g1, rook d to g2 is checkmate. So that was a big blunder, moving the bishop away from that square h2, so that it no longer defends the king. What an amazing blunder. Look at the next example from the 1958 World Championship match between Budwinik and Vasily Smyslov. This one is much harder, but still it's a blunder for these guys at that level. Black in this game played now the move rook c to d8. Everything looks like nicely under control. White is unable to enter and now play the move bishop h3, but that's a mistake in return. What could White have done here? Well, look at this move. Knight d4 is an incredible tactical idea. Well, the point is that if you do take the knight, the idea is to follow up with bishop to d5. Fantastic shot, with the point that if you do take the bishop, now the rook is able to come in on e8, threatening mate on f8, and after rook takes e8, king f7, it's checkmate on f8. Of course there are other lines, but it's all about this idea of playing knight d4 with the idea of including the bishop into the attack. One more line, if we repeat with c takes d4, bishop to d5, you don't have to take the bishop. You could go for the move king h8 right away, but now rook e7 is the killer move, and this is brilliant because you are threatening mate even if black just captures on e7. We have rook takes e7 with mate to follow. Fantastic line, was missed by both players, so blunder from both of them. Then maybe one of the most famous positions in world chess history. It's the game Boris against Bobby Fischer in their World Championship match in 1972 in Reykjavik. It looks like a dead drawish endgame, but here Fischer decided just to take the pawn on h2. And what is he intending to do with this move? He's grabbing a pawn, but there's the move g3. And whatever you do, let's say you put the pawn on h5, trying to save the bishop, the king comes over, and after h4 there's king f3, king e7, king g2, and the bishop is trapped. Nowadays it's probably still a draw with very correct play, even from the start, but it's not a winning attempt at all. Why would you ever take that pawn on h2? In my opinion, it was a really insane decision by Bobby Fischer. Next position is probably even more astonishing, from the 1978 World Championship match in Baguio City between Viktor Korchnoy and Anatoly Karpov, that famous World Championship match in which Korchnoy believed that well, the Russian players, they were not treating him really fair. Look in this position, it's game 17. White had been pressing throughout this game and looks as if he is still doing okay, but he needs to play it safely here with a move like g3, so that after knight f3 the king goes to g2, and there's nothing better than just repeating the moves king g1, knight f3, because if the king goes to h3, well, there's knight g5 with a knight fork. That's what he should have done. And what did he do? Well, he played here the move rook a1, covering the back rank, so there's no checkmate with the move rook c1. But what did he overlook in this game? It's the move knight f3. Check, and it's game over. He resigned. After g takes f3, you go rook g6 check. Now the rook comes from the other side. King h1 and knight f2 is checkmate. Of course, if you don't take the knight on f3, you go king h1. There is this move knight f2. Absolutely incredible that the player of Korchnoy's caliber overlooks it. But that's what his tension is doing with you in general, when you're playing under such high pressure in World Championship matches. Yeah, that's the consequence of it. Look at the next example. Game of Garry Kasparov against Anatoly Karpov from their match in 1958 in Moscow. White played now the move queen g4, attacking the rook on d7. And Karpov thought, well, let's just protect it with the rook from c8. But that's a huge mistake, because he simply overlooked this tactical opportunity based on the move queen takes d7. A beautiful queen sacrifice, and it was time to resign. After rook takes d7, rook e8, king has to go to h7, and now after bishop e4, there's nothing black can do. You have to play g6, and after rook takes d7, well, it's a queen versus two rooks, but these rooks are really powerful. The bishop is under threat, immense pressure on the knight and bishop. If you go away with the bishop, white could simply take now on c6, and after queen takes, it's mate on f7. Incredible mistake. He should have done something about the rook, but much better would have been just to come back with the rook to d8, and the game goes on. It's pretty even. Another example, this time from their 1978 match, Karpov against Kasparov. It's a crucial game in their match, and well, the game is pretty sharp, a lot of possibilities here, but black thought that he had a nice, brilliant attacking move by means of the move rook 7 to f3. A rook sacrifice, but does it work? G takes f3, rook takes f3, and what is the idea? Well, if the queen would go away, there's rook takes h3, king g2, rook g3 check, and now after the king goes to h2, there is this brilliant move d3. This is what Kasparov had been calculating with a discovered attack on the queen and rook. It's game over. But instead, white first played this move rook c7, forcing the king to go to an inferior square, go back to the back rank. And now, rather than moving the queen away, there is this killer move, bishop h6. This is the move missed by Garry Kasparov. The idea is that if black captures on h6, the queen can safely take the rook. And there's not much else you can do. You cannot really stay on the f-file with your queen, as if you go queen f6, there are ideas of playing bishop g7 and white wins. So after rook takes d3, there followed bishop takes f8, rook takes h3, king g2, rook g3, king h2. Rooks were exchanged, but now white just simply captured on c5. He is a piece up and had no problems dealing with that passed pawn, because after d3 there is bishop e3, which is good enough, and the pawn is stopped. What an incredible mistake, miscalculation by Garry Kasparov. The following position from the toilet gate, Topalov against Kramnik. Remember that story that Kramnik was accused of cheating. Well, by going too many times to the toilet. Well, that is not relevant for this video. In this video, we see the missed opportunity here by Topalov. He played the move queen g6, very natural check, but much better would have been to capture a pawn with check. Rook takes g4. It's absolutely killing. So we see that if the king goes away to f7, it's queen h7, and it's going to be a checkmate. If the bishop comes in between, we can simply capture it. If the king goes to h8, we have rook h4, and if the king goes back, it's once again queen h7 with checkmate. So rook takes g4. Probably Topalov thought there's bishop g7. He was too much focused on bringing the queen to the king side. But there is the move queen c7. I believe this was overlooked. There's nothing you can do against this threat of mate on g7. There's one check on f1. Looks incredibly dangerous. Check and threatening the knight. But there's still knight g1, and all the squares around the king have been covered. There's no mate on h3. It's covered by the knight. No mate on g2. The rook is working backwards. So it remains a mystery. What has been missed? Is it the move queen c7 itself, or did he just panic that queen f1 is just winning? Both are probable. We simply don't really know. Anyway, queen takes g6 was still a good option, was played in the game, and white still had a very strong initiative, but eventually went on to lose anyway. Following position from the Kramnik-Anand match in Bonn 2008. Look what happens here, as white is taking the pawn on d4. That's incredibly sharp, and it's based on a miscalculation. But in time trouble, being under pressure, it's not that easy at all. And Fishy Anand had calculated even deeper. White's idea was that after queen takes d4, you have rook d1, putting pressure on the queen and knight. If the queen goes away, you take on d7 with check, and it looks awful. But counter-attacking move, knight f6, great idea, so that the queen is also under threat, the white queen. Rook takes d4 was the idea. Knight takes g4, and the line continues. Yeah, this is all what they had been calculating. Rook d7, king f6. Rook takes b7. Now is an even number of pawns, and Kramnik thought that, well, everything is covered. I can come back with my bishop. I'm covering the back rank mate, and later on, these two connected passed pawns, they should be decisive. After rook c1, bishop f1, all of a sudden, there's this brilliant move, knight e3, which had been overlooked by Vladimir Kramnik. The idea is that you're threatening mate by giving rook takes f1 check. If you take on e3, there's f takes e3, and the e pawn is unstoppable. You cannot move your king away from the back rank. e2 will come next. The bishop is pinned. It's game over. This was one of the key games of their match, as Fischer and Anand won two very important black games, and this was one of them. Next position is from the Carlsen against Anand match in Sochi 2014. And Carlsen looks like, with the white pieces, he is having a risk-free advantage with two fantastic bishops. The rooks are actively placed. And well, he thought, let's just centralize the king, king d2. And Fischer Anand, after a few minutes of thinking, just played here the move a4, and the game continued. But both players, they overlooked this fantastic tactical opportunity, as black could have taken with a knight on e5, and all of a sudden white's position is falling apart. The problem is that you cannot take with the rook on e5 because of rook takes g4, and white is an exchange down. And if you do take on g8 first, with the idea that if you take back, well, there is rook takes e5 and white is a piece up. But the key idea is that after rook takes g8, you don't recapture, you first take on c4. And that's the killer move. It's an in-between check. Now, if you do have the opportunity to take on g8, it's just two nice extra pawns. White can still try king d3, attacking the knight. And that's why first we have to insert this check with the knight on b2. The king goes away, and only now we take on g8. Still, black will have to convert, but what a big tactical oversight by both players. I thought that was quite remarkable. Then our last example is from the last World Championship match between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen was already leading by 2 points, and Jan with the white pieces was really trying to play for a win, but played here the move c5, believing that he could anchor the bishop on b7 by playing the move c6 himself, fixing the pawn on c7. But what did he miss? Well, very simple move. Black can play the move c6 himself here, and then all of a sudden the bishop is trapped. There's nothing you can do about it. White tried to play the move f3 to kick the knight out. Well, the knight is not that well placed on h6, but the bishop is still hanging. If you go rook e4, there's rook a7, attacking the bishop. If you go rook b4, there's rook b8, and the bishop cannot escape because otherwise the rook is hanging. So this is an incredible blunder from one of the best players in the world. So this is my favorite list of biggest blunders in history. This is my top 10. But if you think there's something missing, please let me know. There are so many other blunders as well, which I could cover on the channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon again. Bye bye.